Well, welcome everybody today to how to get the best energy contract at any time. So today we're going to talk about a number of bits and pieces, but before we get started, I thought I'd introduce our panelists today that we've got here. So thanks for joining us. Today we're going to run for about 45 minutes with about 15 minutes for questions at the end. So if you've got any questions, you can just type them straight into the section on the right-hand side. I think you've got it, depending on how your screen's laid out. And we'll try and get through as many of those as we can towards the end of the session. And obviously at the end of this, we'll also send out the slides and the recordings that you can listen to later on and forward on to others as well. So I just welcome Bianca and Aidan. So Aidan.
Thank you, Matthew. Good to be here. I'm the Senior Portfolio Analyst at Flow Power. So really my role revolves around making sure we're internally risk managed and some of the internal hedges, but also providing pricing to our pricing team and our sales guys.
Thanks, Aidan. And Bianca.
Hi guys, I'm Bianca and I'm the Inside Sales Manager here at Flow Power, and I've got quite a few keen and interested staff members wanting to speak to you.
Yes, thanks Bianca. And obviously I'm the Director and Founder of Flow Power. And have been doing this for a little while now, so it's good to have you all on the line. So Flow Power, for those who don't know who we are, we call ourselves a wholesale electricity retailer. I guess what we mean by that is we're trying to package up all the same tools that your current retailer uses to buy your power, and we're trying to make all those tools available to the end user. So that means things like access to spot, but also means access to the derivatives market, the ASX market, futures. Today we're going to talk about our Power Active product, but we're also things like large-scale renewables, wind and solar, on-site generation, on-site solar, and we've got a full engineering team supporting that. So quite a variety. And then these things that I'm talking about are core to our business. They're not a sideshow. They are what we do at heart. So what you get from us is full transparency and hopefully more opportunities than ever before to really reduce your power. In recent history, we've signed large-scale renewables. I think we've got 440 megawatts in the market. We've got over half of that committed. With those renewables are doing very well, saving customers a lot of money. I think we recently published over 15 million saved off the first contracts we've signed over the past 12 months. And we've also reached our main goal of having solar and wind in every state. So we'll get through some of that detail as we progress. Today, we're going to introduce you to Power Active, give you a bit of a market overview. We're going to provide an example of a case study of how a customer purchased power, and then take some questions and talk about next steps and so forth. So market overview. So we've come from a very rigid system where fixed contracts were the norm, and customers generally were on a cycle where they would sign up to a 1-year or a 3-year contract. And that's how it's been done for a long time, for a very long time. And what we've got in today's market is many businesses coming off quite low rates and having to renew. Some businesses not, because they signed up 12 months ago and got a big price shock 12 months ago. But we're still on that process right now of the whole market experiencing this massive price shock that's happened in recent history. That actually sort of happened around Hazelwood shutdown is where it all jumped up a lot, I think is the big one.
Yeah, 2017 was probably the most significant kick in the market, but we've seen certainly ebbs and flows.
Through history we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we've had a sustained increase since then. So, and I guess what we're trying to highlight today is the market is changing. We're having a dramatic shift in the market and how it works. You've got new players coming into the market, and it's not just Flow Power who's trying to push a different business model. We've got many retailers really stretching their thinking on how to approach the market. We've got a lot of new technology. IoT is a buzzword, but that is going to have a big impact on this market. We've got new technologies like batteries coming in, and then we've got a massive quantity of wind and solar coming into the market as well that's going to replace coal-fired generation. And these things are built in, these things are happening. There's a certain level of momentum there that's going to take place. So in many ways, the discussion about what is it going to change is sort of it's really more of a case of how much is it going to change almost, isn't it? In terms of and how quickly. You've got many businesses pursuing a carbon neutral type scheme, which is impacting the market as well. So I guess the story is that there's a lot of opportunities for consumers, and consumers are looking for new ways to buy power. And there is some pretty effective ways to change what you're doing and get the benefit for it, not just to be different, to actually get a benefit for it. So we've got, when it comes to contracting, when it comes to energy price, we've got a number of things that impact the market price. These impact things day to day and into the future as well. Things like water storage for, say, Snowy Hydro's scheme has a big impact on short-term pricing. That's right, Aidan?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The supply-demand balance from a real-time perspective, obviously influential, the spot market, and many of these factors as listed here on the slide are key to driving both the short-term market, the spot market, but also future expectations of where prices may go. Yeah.
So we've got things like weather. So we've got projected hot summer. It'll push prices up often. If you've got low water storage with Snowy Hydro being largely a peaking gen, that generally pushes summer up as well. If they've got excess storage, it pushes things down. Policy and regulation is a big one. What is going to happen with the RRO? What is going to happen with the underwriting new generation? What is going to happen with the states in terms of what their goals will be? In terms, will they continue to push their goals to achieve 40% reduction? I think 40% in Victoria by 2025, I think it is, in terms of renewables. New South Wales hasn't actually set a target yet, but they're showing to be ambitious. What will they do? And what is the impact of the federal outcome with the Liberals coming back in? Will that actually push prices up or down? And these are all the sorts of factors that the market is always trying to predict to work out where we're going. So, and there's many more that we haven't even spoken about. So what you've got in the marketplace is two major areas when we're considering pricing. You've got the spot market, which is a day-to-day, 5-minute to 5-minute literal price that's set, and it's very much a supply and demand price setting scenario, where essentially if there's not enough supply, the price goes through the roof very quickly. If there's excess supply, it comes down, and that price gets, I think the generator's bid in every 5 minutes.
Yep.
And the actual settlement price is across 30 minutes. So there's that day-to-day market, and then you've got the forward market. So I guess what I'm trying to explain is the reason. So as we move into the forward market, what we're talking about, the ASX futures market, we're talking about a market where participants can come in, and this can include consumers, can come in and rather than be exposed to a variable price every 30 minutes or every day, they can enter a contract that essentially flattens that price out and removes the moment-to-moment variability from that market. So it's that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, because that's essentially what affects your contract market. As that market moves up and down, it moves up and down based on those factors we just spoke about the uncertainties. Is there enough water storage? What generation is going to exit in the market over the next 3 years? What generation is going to come online? What's the policy regulation? So there's someone sitting there trying to say, oh, well, I think the price is going to go up because of this. So they're willing to sell their energy into the market at that level. And that's essentially what's driving, when you enter a 3-year contract, that's largely what's driving the price you get. So the chart that we've actually got here in front of you, what that's actually showing you, that's not showing you the spot market price. That's actually showing you the financial year 2020 price. So if you entered a contract essentially in January 17, or say if I say April 17, you would have got about 8.78 cents kilowatt hour for financial year 20. If you take that forward to say just after April 18, say, it would have been 6.17. So that's the market's view of what financial year 20 would have been priced at. And as you can see, depending on when you enter that contract, you get very, very different outcomes. Where we are roughly now is we're up around 9 cents a kilowatt hour 9.06 is roughly where that financial year 20 price is at the moment. I'm not sure how up to date that number is, but the main thing we're trying to highlight here is the timing in terms of the price you get. It goes up and down on these factors, and these factors are difficult to predict. In fact, if you could predict them, we might have a different type of business. We might be retired somewhere, you might say. But it's a difficult task, and Aidan can talk to that quite a lot in terms of trying to predict what's going to happen at the best time.
It certainly is, and on top of all of those physical factors that Matthew reeled off, there's a healthy dose of speculation and sentiment that washes over the market as well. So everyone has a slightly different view and a slightly different agenda in the market, and so that can also control the price. But essentially, the ASX price, the forward market, generally underpins retail contracts out there in the market.
Yeah. So it's and this is the topic for today. Is we're talking about what do you do about this, and I guess we're going to get into what Power Active does to help you with this problem. So on the next page, just briefly, what we've got is is here we've mapped out the financial year 20, financial year 21, and 22. So each one of those lines is how each of those financial years' futures price has changed over that period of time. So here we've got 21 coming in, and we'll bring in 22 as well. So what you do is you look at a point in time when you would enter a contract. So if we look at, say, March 19 as of today, you know, our financial year 20 prices are, you know, somewhere above $90. I think they are. Our financial year 21 price would be around the $75. I don't have the exact figures, but you can sort of see it on the chart right at the very end of that chart there. And the 2022 is around $60, or they're about $65, $70, I think it is. So this chart just sort of shows you that if you enter a 3-year contract at any point, this is the prices that you would pay in each of those financial years at that point in time. And once again, the demonstration here is it moves around a lot. It goes up, it goes down, and the previous chart showed that it can drop dramatically from these levels. So I'll just take you a little bit further into one more chart here before we move on. This one just shows you the calendar year. So this is looking at calendar year 2020. So January 2020 to December 2020. So just showing you the more recent history of exactly where we're at for that calendar year. But you can see we've had quite a significant increase in the last 12 or so months, basically. This is a 12-month chart. So it's been moving up. It's just started to move down a little. And by the time we get to the end of this year, then that will be in calendar 2020, and this chart will stop. So at the moment, we're at a relatively, you would probably suggest, a historical high point.
Exactly right, and I think between this chart and the 3 financial years shown on the previous slide, you're looking at a fairly elevated market and fairly challenging conditions for end users and consumers to be recontracting in, given the historical highs that we see at the moment. Yeah,
and it's a difficult time because the charting and the data shows that we are historically high, but you know, if I could chart out the factors on that other slide with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of the factors that are influencing the market, if I could create a chart of that, you would find that the level of uncertainty of about trying to predict the future price is probably the worst it's ever been as well, in terms of knowing what those influencing factors will be over the next 1, 2, or 3 years. It is at a historical difficult time to predict. There's always factors that make it difficult, but the technologies that are coming in, the new generation coming online, we've never retired a coal fleet before. What's that going to do on the market? We've never tried to deal with wind and solar. You know, 6,000 megawatts of wind and solar coming into the market over the next few years. We've never tried to manage that load coming on and off dramatically. So there's a lot in this market that could push it up, but there's also a lot that could push it down. So it is a difficult time. So we'll get into introduce the Power Active product for you, give you a bit of background. So Flow Power, when we looked at the market and we looked at how traditional retailers buy energy, and we tried to put our wholesale lens on this problem. And we went and looked at the products that are available in the market to try and work out, how can we develop something that works, that is there. And you've got to remember, Flow Power our motivations are, I like to think our motivations are very different in the marketplace. We don't manage a hedging book. We help manage our customers in their energy use. So it changes the lens a little bit as a retailer as you're looking at the products you can take to market. We're not looking to hedge a position to get ahead. We're looking to try and find the best hedging position for our customers in the marketplace. So one of the biggest things we know in the market, and this is a major motivation, I think, for other retailers, and you can correct me if I'm going off track here, Aidan, but they have a hedging position and they're trying to get the upside of that. So they'll go through periods where the market's rising. That's probably generally not the best outcome. The best outcome for retailers is when the market's falling, is my reading of it.
Large customer loads locked into 1, 2 or 3 year prices and the market's falling, and no responsibility or requirement to pass through any of those falls. So you're absolutely right that a softer market playing out is better for retailers under fixed price arrangements.
Yeah. Maybe another thing to put in there, or if you're vertically integrated.
It does start to get a little bit murkier when you bring in generation as well, like the big three have. But certainly there is the potential to do very well out of both sides of those deals. I think
well, I know if I own the supply chain and own the generation and the retail, I think the main thing I just want is high prices. So whether it comes and falls, it probably is less impactful on them because they're getting the hedge price right through it. So
I think what's a really important point here as well, Matthew, is as much as we've looked at the market and trends in the past, we also take on all the customer feedback that we get, current and new clients and prospects as well. Yeah. And this product, Power Active, is based off feedback from them as well and what they need.
Yeah, definitely. So the things we tried to get into the Power Active product was flexibility. We tried to build this product so that you would always get the upside of the markets going forward, and Aidan's going to take us through that in a lot more detail in a minute. We tried to make it so that you could bring in things like renewables into the formula as well. And we'll touch a little bit on that later. And that ability to be flexible to change your strategy midway through it. But upside, I've got to say, the upside aspect of it is the key one, because you can have this market move around by 20%. And in today's market, we're at historically high levels. So the potential for it to move down is probably higher than usual. So one of the goals is to, should I go long, should I go short? Well, if you can get access to the upside, then go long. That's sort of where this leads to, and then the logical outcome of when you look at this product and how it works, that's usually where you end up. You might pay a little bit more for that upside, but that upside's potential is very significant. So I think we're going to get into a little bit more detail now on how this product actually works. So I'll hand over to Aidan a little bit.
Thanks, Matthew. Just before we jump in, we'll reiterate a little bit about the standard retail product, the fixed rate product, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And really that involves locking in a rate for 1, 2, 3 years, whatever the duration may be. Those rates are fixed, and as Matthew has pointed out, in the event that the ASX futures market falls for either that second or third year or even part of the first year, you're unlikely to see any of that benefit pass through to you by your retailer. You trade off certainty for giving up that downside in price, but upside to your bottom line, if you like. And there's also very limited flexibility in those fixed retail prices. So they're not going to reward you. There's assumptions made about how and when you consume electricity throughout the day and throughout the year. And if that shifts, if you undertake energy efficiency projects, if you put solar behind the meter, certainly your consumption will go down, but you're unlikely to be rewarded in terms of an improved price or an improved shape factor.
Yeah.
And so that's really where the Power Active comes in.
You are obviously still protected from massive increases in price during that period of time.
You certainly are. You certainly are. So in a rising market, to go long looks good.
Yep.
And your hedges are going to be, or your fixed rate deals are going to be in the money. But if the market does come off, you're left holding something that's probably overpriced relative to where the market would be, and potentially overpriced relative to where your competitors are picking up their retail offers as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Power Active product, as designed, provides a new level of flexibility, but still quite firm rates. In the event that you take out the active option, which does really help eliminate that timing risk for a small access fee, but does give you that downside in the market if prices do fall, upside for your bottom line, as I said earlier. That's really where this product eliminates timing risk, and you're encouraged to go long term. We take the stress out of it for you. You don't need to be monitoring the market on a daily basis or a week-to-week basis. Once you take out that active option, we look after that for you. And there's also a really high degree of transparency under this product. The minor bit of mathematics, we won't stretch you too hard on this WebEx, but the formula at the bottom there is really your build rate and how it is calculated. It's not too dissimilar to a fixed price deal, but here you can actually see the components. You can see what goes into making it, and there's a couple of neat little features, the active option, which we'll go into a little bit more detail, but also the price efficiency factor, which is a little bit like a shape risk or load shape factor, as you might be familiar with, but we'll talk a little bit about how you will be rewarded under this product for improvements in your consumption profile with the price efficiency factor.
The key thing with this is to just keep reinforcing as well is if you enter into a Power Active contract for a 3-year period, you'll get a rate for that 3 years. You'll know what that rate is. And it'll be plugged into this formula to give you an outcome. So this is not in any way, a spot outcome or anything like that. This is very comparable to a fixed contract. It can get cheaper depending on how the market moves.
And how you consume.
And how you consume, that's right. So
let's talk a little bit more about this potential to access falling prices. So imagine you sign a 3-year deal with the active option in the 2nd and the 3rd year, and prices fall between you signing the contract and us getting into the 2nd and or 3rd year of delivery. For that small premium, we'll move you onto the lower price in the market. You haven't had to follow the market on a day-to-day basis, as we said earlier, and we'll pass that through to you. Whereas under the alternate world, obviously under a fixed price arrangement, you are locked in. And so really, there's some incentive to be thinking longer term, even in potentially what feels like elevated market conditions like we have at the moment. In practice, if we pop over to the next slide, you'll see exactly how it might work. And in this scenario here of price evolution for Victorian contracts, in the event that you'd signed a contract with the active option in, say, February or March of 2018, you'd be protected by a rate just under $77 a megawatt hour, or 7.5 cents a megawatt, 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And if and as the price fell like it did through the first half of 2018, we would then step you onto a lower rate and provide you access to that lower price in the market. You wouldn't be stuck at that 7.5 cents. Subsequently, if you'd signed in the middle of 2018, you would also have been protected from a rising market, similar to what you would be in a standard fixed rate agreement. But had the market continued to fall, we'd certainly been able to provide you access to those lower contract prices.
So this example actually shows you that just prior to the start of the fin year, those rates get set basically. That's correct, isn't it?
Exactly right. So how long can you ride this active option is probably a good question.
Yes.
And that we'd set the price about 6 weeks out from the start of either the financial year or the calendar year.
Depending on how it works.
Exactly, yep. Depending on what your contract structure is. So we don't ride those positions into the market. You would have certainty of price going into the period of delivery for budgeting purposes, but up to 6 weeks before time of financial year or calendar year, we could move you on to a lower rate.
And that's what just basically automatically happens. My understanding is if the market has dropped, then at that time it gets set and we notify you of your new rates. And it's all transparent. It's all based on where the ASX market's at that point in time.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
One other point to make before we move off the active option is some of you on the call may be familiar with progressive purchasing, and maybe your loads are big enough that you're on a product, a retail product that allows you to take bites into the futures market in multiple tranches rather than having to take 1, 2 or 3 years. And certainly the active option for customer loads which are big enough, it's probably multiples of 10 gigawatt hours, on an annual basis in a single region, would be able to have access to the active option with multiple ability to move on to the lower price if you wanted to spread risk through a couple of nominations.
You know, for those bigger users, that's actually an amazingly powerful outcome. Like it's progressive purchasing the right way, almost, you'd call it, because you're locking in, rather than locking in what may be a higher rate through the progressive purchasing period, you're going to lock in at where the market is now. And then if the market starts to fall, start locking in lower rates.
Exactly right. Imagine flipping it on its head, starting almost at 100% hedged, but then being able to flip that into a lower price as the market moves lower. And if the market rises, you're already sitting there at 100% hedged.
Yeah, it's where the progressive purchasing model would lock in a portion of your load. Potentially, if the market keeps rising, you'll just keep locking in higher and higher prices. So this is the best of both worlds in that sense. It's a very powerful option.
I'll pass to Matthew to just conclude on the price efficiency factor before we dig a little bit deeper into VGA.
So I'll try not to spend too much time on this one, but as we explained at the beginning, we've got a spot market that moves every 30 minutes, sitting underlying all of these market mechanisms. And this really comes down to your energy efficiency strategy or energy management strategy that you may be looking to implement. When you enter into a contract, you'll know how you use your power. You'll have predictable rates and predictable outcomes based on your pattern of usage. Now, for those that are looking to become more energy efficient, they might be able to come in and install a battery. And a battery will make you more price efficient in the market, because the battery will charge when the price is low and will discharge when the price is high. That makes you a more efficient customer in the eyes of the market. And the main concept of the price efficiency factor is you get rewarded for that. And the net effect is the contract that you entered, at the beginning of your power active period will actually come down. Your actual energy rate that you'll end up paying will come down through taking those actions. So that might form the basis of a battery, or it might inform an energy efficiency strategy, or your building management system could be tweaked to improve your price shape, and you'll get a better rate. This is to encourage customers to become more market efficient. That improves the market reliability and improves your price outcome. So it really is it's actually a very important part of our product that we work with you to try and do that over time. You don't need to do it, but most companies have an energy efficiency strategy. This should form a very important part of it. So this is a very important part of the product that we can take you through in more detail. We've got a complete engineering department here that is being geared up to help our customers improve this component of their business and become more efficient. So it's not just about buying solar and wind. You've actually also got to help us improve reliability of the market, and this is one way to do it.
And on that point, one of the other neat things about the Power Active product is not only does it work in tandem with some of the energy efficiency solutions that Matthew was describing, but also with corporate PPAs, or virtual generation agreements, as they're known in the flow power world. So certainly they can go hand in hand, and if you were to buy a portion of your load with either solar or wind, you could be taking balance of supply with the Power Active product, including the active option.
Yeah, so they're fully compatible, and they'll work together very, very nicely. So now we're going to have Bianca take us through a bit of an example.
Yes, before we get into any questions, I'll quickly take you through a bit of a case study. So this will give you some further examples around the active option and a customer taking out a Power Active plan. So Daniel's an operation manager for a business in New South Wales. He had a challenge 2 years ago, so back in 2017, when his existing agreement was about to expire. Coming out of an extreme summer, market rates had obviously increased, which then had a big impact on the type of retail offers that the business began to receive from other retailers. Daniel felt the offers that he was being presented with were actually too high and had concerns with the potential of the market dropping just around the corner. He knew that energy contracts are typically traded by retailers on the wholesale market, and that rates could vary depending on the time of year. So this actually made him look at alternate options in the market, for which he ended up signing a 2-year power agreement with us here at Flow Power.
So that experience of market pricing is probably pretty typical at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
With customers ringing in. So.
Absolutely. So based on that, Daniel's business chose to add the active option in both years of their plan. While they paid an access fee to add the active option in the first year, it was an easy decision to make due to unusually high market rates. They knew it would let them tap into the lower price if the market fell again, and it actually did. So by late 2017, the rates for financial year 2019 dropped by 5%. The active option moved the business directly onto the lower rate, which delivered them a savings of 2% after the active option premium was deducted.
It's not bad, not a bad outcome really, given between March and May, taking out the active option not only provided them certainty, but also access to a couple of months worth of falls there.
That's right.
And it is one of those things, the option does cost a little bit, like it is going to probably increase your rate marginally above what you might get on a fixed contract, but it's about the upside and protecting you, the potential for the market to rise and the potential for the market to fall, and trying to protect yourself against the rise and get access to the fall.
Yeah. So by the time, same time the following year, the market rates had fallen even further. And because Daniel took out the active option for the business, we were actually able to secure an 18% lower rate for the financial year 2019. So seeing the benefits and savings delivered by the active option, the business contracted early for financial year 2020, which is a really great outcome for him and his business. So whilst the active option for this contract hasn't been exercised as yet, locking in their new agreement early actually allowed Daniel and his business to avoid prices in the market rising for more than 20% of the third contract year. The business in the first year saved 2% against market prices, and then another 18% in the second year because of the active options. That's where the upside came for him longer term.
Okay.
So I guess the outcome here, obviously, Daniel's business was able to find a solution not only that brought their energy costs under control, gave them the greater control and flexibility over their pricing, and also reduced the risk of contracting at the wrong time. Aidan, what if the customer took out a PPA?
Yeah, so we certainly have, as Matthew said, solar and wind in most states at the moment, and consider sleeving in or rolling in some supply there at around 6 cents, and depending on what project you may be attached to and what mix of wind and solar you want in there, but certainly that would bring about further savings at 6 cents relative to the current elevated market, and compared to the elevated market at the time Daniel was signing his original 2-year deal.
Yeah, so if you took 50%, then 50% of your energy is probably supplied at that 6 cent.
Absolutely.
Adjusted accordingly. So it's also a lot longer term. So there's a lot more detail to get through with the solar and wind aspect, but it is compatible. I guess that's the main thing. And if you did do 50%, you'd have that 6 cents for the 10 years.
Time. Yeah.
And you'll avoid the fluctuations as Liddell goes down, or whatever happens.
Policy changes.
So it's actually quite exciting. We're not focusing on that today, but have a chat to us when the time comes. So, all right. So it's time to get a few questions. I think we're running slightly over time, but we've still got enough time for questions, which is great. So we'll start going through those. There's already quite a few come in. First question that I've got here. So the case study talked about the year 3 and contracting that early. I think it was suggesting. What is that about, I think, is what they're asking in terms of what's the benefit of that. So, and we actually didn't cover that. Does someone want to?
Yeah, so we'd see the benefit of the strategy as a bit of a rolling strategy, 2 or 3 years taken at a time. And as we said earlier, that the active option expires 6 weeks before entering into the period as you move into the first period of delivery. And that first year falls off, or is the year of delivery. You might think about taking a 4th year in a rolling strategy And the reason why we think you should do that, we've seen it perform quite well in back testing over around 15 years of looking at the product. But it also ties in relatively nicely with liquidity in both the ASX market and the options market, where we undertake some hedging in the background. But essentially, as you roll into the year of delivery, we'll be looking at a third year or a fourth year as you go. And so that would be one way to continue to hedge long term and not take on the risk around markets continuing to rise and move against you.
Yeah, that's great. It's actually a really, in terms of timing, it's one of the key things is once you get your head around the option, then it's not logical to wait for your contract to come to expiry before you enter the next period of options. What's logical is to continue extending that option as far out as you can.
Absolutely.
And getting that long-term protection. You know, the market, and it's traditional to know that, you know, if you usually sign up to that 30 rate, it's often, well, it is in the current market lower than today's market. Historically, it's probably been higher, hasn't it?
It really depends on what the ASX market is sort of backwardated or how it's shaped at any point in time.
Yeah.
But at the moment, slightly cheaper.
Yeah, but it's true to say that the market has far less certainty about how it's going to come out.
Absolutely.
In that time.
Bigger swings.
So you're really protecting yourself against that possible outcome in 2 or 3 years' time that's very hard to predict. So the logical thing is it becomes a rolling thing. Each time one of your options firms up, and you either get the option price or the lower price, you then you also at the same time sign up to your next option and keep that rolling forward. It's a very powerful outcome.
We've got another question that's come through about currently supplying, and the question is, does Flow Power currently supply to any hotels, and how does the average savings for the business model? What are the average savings for this business model? I think that says. We do have a number, and we have run a lot of models with different industries, and it all comes down to the actual workings of each location and each business. So we don't have a stereotypical spendings or savings for a particular industry. It all comes down to modelling against your business. So what we'd love to do is talk to you a little bit further about that. You can give us a call and we can look at doing some modelling against your business and show you the potential savings that you would have had in the last 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, being on a Power Active model.
I know the analysis we've often done has been at a market level, so showing the average market outcomes. Now, obviously, in out of that, you will get swings around about sort of different industries, different timings, and things like that. But it's a good place to start if you're trying to understand wholesale and where it stands, is to look at the historical outcomes. So we can talk to you more about that. Definitely, definitely. Someone's asked what the access fee is for the active option, because it does cost a bit of money. There is a, it's analogous to, I suppose, like an insurance product. There is a price to it. So it will depend on the market at the time in terms of the available product in the market. I think it'll vary somewhere between 0.5 cent to 1 cent a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, maybe slightly less than that, to sort of 0.4 of a cent up to 0.8 of a cent.
Okay. Yep.
It's influenced by tenor as well. So if we're looking at that third year, premium's probably at the upper end of that range. But if we're only looking at holding the active option open for 6 months or 12 months, it might be at the lower end of that range. Yeah.
So when you look at the when you put it by comparison to the scheme of the energy rates that are currently in the market, it's not that much.
It's a relatively small percentage of the ASX price. So when you're thinking about it in terms of will I be in the money or at the money by taking the active option, you're looking at needing to see your price fall by that 0.4 cent to 0.8 cent to overcome that.
Yeah.
For you to be better off financially, and we can also obviously add the other benefits of stress-free contracting.
And interestingly, if you were just to even look at it, almost any chart of any year, 2 years out, I bet you it's moved by more than a cent over that period of time.
Well and truly, it'd be a fairly boring market, dull market if it didn't.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, there is a cost to it, but and like we said, our historical analysis shows that cost is more than adequately covered. It gives you a very positive outcome. I think better than spot outcomes over the long term. So. do I get additional benefit if I put solar on my roof from this plan? So solar is an interesting one in terms of how that market's evolving. Historically, the answer is yes, you would have. Your energy rate would have paid, you would not only paid less in terms of the volume of energy, but you would have paid less in terms of the rate. As this moves forward, that will probably shift as the market shape changes. But we're talking relatively minor impacts. And the other major thing is to consider is in your solar strategy is your energy efficiency and how you're using your power as well. So solar at this point and where we're at the market, my view is it's a very positive outcome. I know from the large scale renewable it is. So it's yeah, so it does need to be considered and looked at, but it's completely compatible with the product and how we're doing things. So what if I sign onto this plan and want to buy large scale renewables like wind and solar at a later date? Is anybody?
Yeah, so the sort of beauty of that rolling strategies we talked about before is that there is some flexibility there, particularly in the later years, to consider not only the ASX, but also potentially wind and solar from a PPA or a virtual generation agreement to meet some or a portion of your load. So it's certainly compatible to come after initially signing a power active agreement and then thinking longer term. I understand, as Matthew alluded to before, that these decisions to sign up for 5, 7, 10 years can take longer to get across the line in businesses, and so may not be in a position to go immediately, but we can certainly look at sleeving that in with the power active product.
Okay, thanks Aidan. I'm just trying to read through the questions as I go.
There's another one. So if the market has been on a record high, isn't there a risk of it dropping, and why should I sign now?
Yeah, well that's a really good question. So you work through that under a fixed rate contract, and it's a real dilemma. You know, if we are on a historical high and you've got a 3-year offer and you know, you're just wanting to not experience another price rise again, so you think, I'll just lock this away. This is what the power active option is really designed for, isn't it? You can lock away the 3 years, but hopefully the market drops from the historical high and you want the benefit for it. So the answer is you go 3 years, isn't it?
Sure is.
Yeah. So and that's the dilemma. And it takes a while for people to get to understand that, to really come to terms with how this changes your decision-making process. So it does take a bit of time, but yeah, that's basically it. Timing sort of is removed from this formula. You come in and you continue to try to always have that option in place as far out as you can. There might be a little bit of science in trying to choose when to put the option in place, but it's far less of an issue for you than it has been historically. So I know we're running out of time, so we're at 45 minutes now. So I've probably got time for one more question. So which one should I pick? So someone's asked a question here, is power active just a fixed rate that moves? So Aidan.
Certainly the power active product has many of the elements of a fixed rate price in terms of a high degree of certainty. But I would say that it also has these additional benefits, such as the price efficiency factor that can be improved through some of those management programs and energy efficiency programs that you alluded to earlier, Matthew, but also the ability to move on to a lower price. So I'd probably say that that's probably a simplification and a dumbing down of the product. It's certainly, and maybe not as, to hear the product in the first time, maybe a little bit daunting, but we have tried to simplify it quite a lot and try to distill those benefits to you as an end user. But I was probably categorise that description as a little bit a bit blunt for
so if you
what we've got.
The way I'd probably context it is that the old fixed rate contract, it's like a dumb simple price, really simple, like so simple in fact that it doesn't reflect how the market works at all. Our product is it is a fixed price still in terms of that contracted rate is there. You just need to spend a little bit of time to understand these other components that come in and and how they can be a significant advantage to you. And as you work through it, they're very logical, they make a lot of sense, and they can be a huge advantage to your strategy. Can you budget on a power active structure? Absolutely, yes. You can write your budgets, you know what you'll spend, you know, assuming that your pattern of usage remains relatively consistent, your outcome will be very consistent. But a change in pattern, a change in usage, you know, doubling the size and all those sorts of things will influence any contract you're under. So,
exactly right.
So yeah, I think that's about all we've got time for. So we'll wrap that up now. So please, if we didn't get to your questions, we'll come back to you at a later time. If you've got any other questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call. And hopefully we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining.